Hello everyone and welcome to Triangle of Fans. This is Monish and as always I'm joined by Nishant. The NBA camps begin today. It's December 1st. A lot of teams are stacking up their rosters. They have stacked up their rosters. A few teams have moved around a few pieces. They've pushed themselves from playoff contenders to absolute favorites now. In today's episode we'll talk about two such teams. The Philadelphia 76ers. They managed to hold on to Embiid and Ben Simmons and added a lot of pieces that make them real contenders in the East. In the West, we'll also talk about the Dallas Mavericks. Along with Luka Doncic and Porzingis, they've added Josh Richardson, who I think is a very valuable pick. We'll see how these two teams stack up, and we'll analyze their moves and all of that in today's episode. Hey Nishant, what's up? The camp start today, and a lot of teams will are getting ready for the NBA season, which is just 3 weeks away. But I'm looking at one particular player here, Anthony Davis. He's not attached to any team. He's not a Laker technically. What is happening with him? Because he's not signed a contract yet.
Yep, I think it's what it is. It's what we discussed. I think the Lakers are definitely waiting on Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple of other free agency moves they have in mind because next season, as we've mentioned time and time again, next season is when the free agency really opens up. Giannis, of course, is potentially the biggest name
Mm-hmm.
who could be a free agent next season if he doesn't sign the Supermax before the 21st of this month. Now, he's not the only one, though. There's going to be a bunch of big name free agents next season, and a lot of teams, if you notice, are lining up.
Yeah.
Oklahoma have shed a bunch of contracts. They're playing it conservative. I know they're amassing picks, but they're playing it real conservative, cost cutting and stuff like that for
Mm-hmm.
to be in prime position next season to build a squad around a superstar. You see Miami do the same. You see Dallas kind of offloaded a bit of salary here and there to create space for a max slash supermax maybe, and I think that's what it is. And the Lakers, LeBron's always been about this, right? He's always been about building the best team possible and always recruiting the best talent to come play with him. He's never not done this, so you would expect him to have the foresight to be in that sort of a position next season. And even if he's not directly doing it, at least ask this of his team. So the idea is at the end of this season, LeBron has a player option. I think what they're looking to do and what the insiders report, I've heard Brian Windhorst talk about this a lot, is that AD wants to get a similar kind of structure, and that's what the franchise would like as well, so that both LeBron and AD can opt out of their contracts, and it gives them largely a clean slate to work with because they don't have guaranteed money owed to anyone else. They have bit part contracts here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
they'll free up a lot of space to figure things out in free agency. So I think that's what it is. But it is still mighty odd that camp is about to begin and he's still not on any roster. It's a bit too close for comfort, I suppose, but looks like the Lakers have it covered.
All right. I hope he really signs soon because he was my pick for the MVP in yesterday's episode. So I really hope he gets onto the Lakers as soon as possible. But in today's episode, I actually wanted to focus on two teams and I think two real contenders. Actually, coincidentally, both of them were ranked second in my power rankings.
Yeah.
The 76ers, let's start off with them because Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, there were a lot of talks in the offseason about how Philly were going to split them up. Embiid or Ben Simmons, one of them might be traded. There were talks of possibly a trade for James Harden because of the Daryl Morey coming in situation. They also have Doc Rivers at the helm. So, but they managed to hold on. They've kept most of their team intact. They managed to hold on to Embiid, Ben Simmons, and also Tobias Harris, who's a pretty decent player. But I think the main addition, I think, were the side pieces, right? They've gotten Seth Curry, who's a 44% shooter from three. They've gotten Danny Green, who has the championship experience. In fact, he's coming off a championship at the Lakers. They've also added a big center. Dwight Howard will relieve Embiid when he's off and not playing. I think Dwight Howard is a pretty good addition as well. So that looks like a very strong team.
Yeah, the Dwight Howard signing is particularly impactful for them because he's had a bit of a late resurgence in his career. And he's remodeled himself to be this ideal role player, which he never was. He was always a bit of a problematic superstar with limited skill set. But now he's embraced that role player role, if I may.
Mhm.
And he's really maximizing what was always probably his biggest strength is his defense. He's been a multiple DPOY. He's been one of the best defenders in the league for years, and he showed some of that last season with the Lakers. Philadelphia would be real appreciative of that. Because when Embiid and Simmons are on the floor, that's a fearsome defense. Now, when Embiid's off the floor, they lose a lot of that size. And Al Horford, well, he's not on the team anymore, but last season when he was around, he wasn't really that guy anymore. So they really took a hit on size, which when Embiid's on the court, Simmons is no midget either. So they've got real size, whether it's perimeter defense or rim protection, right? And that's a bit of what Dwight Howard would lend to them. So that's my favorite signing. I like Seth Curry. I like loading up shooters. But Danny Green, I'm not sold, right? I think I've completely lost confidence in the guy, that he is that guy anymore. But it's classic Daryl Morey. He goes there, shakes things up, brings in a bunch of signings, never afraid to change the status quo. And with Doc Rivers, this looks like a really good team.
Yeah. So when they went to the bubble, I know Ben Simmons didn't last the bubble too long, but when they went to the bubble, they started experimenting with Ben Simmons at power forward, right? He was a point guard. So how do you think that'll work out? Are they going to moving back to the point guard position, or do you think they'll put him at the power forward and think that's where his role lies now going forward?
They can put him at the 4. I mean, they have the squad to do it now. If they choose to start Danny Green, they've got the squad to. If they want to start Seth Curry and Danny Green, which is, I don't see that working, but they have enough guards now, and somebody's going to start, somebody's going to carry the ball. But if Ben Simmons is on the floor, and I love him at the 4. I think he's great at the 4. He has the size for it. He can play that position. But if he's not handling the ball and he's not running your offense, you're giving up on someone who's actually a pretty amazing playmaker. He's great at running the point. So unless they plan him to play as a point forward sort of position, like what LeBron does, but at the number 4, unless they do that or give him like a Luka sort of role, it's going to be a waste of talent. You might as well trade him then and try and bring in somebody else. But if it's a point forward, he'll play the 4, but he'll also be the primary ball handler, and the offense runs through him. I think that's a phenomenal role for him. That's a good fit, and they finally have the guards to pull that off.
One thing about the 76ers is that they always feel like they're rebuilding, right? The process, as they call it. And every year they've had this, when they go into the season, they seem like favorites, but somehow they fizzle out. And even the last season, right? They look like real contenders, but once you came to the playoffs, you knew that the Celtics were favorites and they actually trashed them. You could argue that Ben Simmons was missing and that made quite a difference, but this has been happening for years now. They got knocked out by the Raptors in the final a couple of years back by that Kawhi Leonard shot that you keep bringing up a million times. But this always seems to keep happening. This is a team that goes there and yet fizzles out. And I'm kind of worried that this is again the same thing, because can you really trust the likes of Danny Green, Seth Curry, Dwight Howard, and their bench, right? They have Korkmaz, they have Thibault, and all of these guys. So apart from the big two, which is Ben Simmons and Embiid, are the others really up to it? Are they really chip contending? Do they have the mentality? Is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, we've never had a chance to find out. That's the problem, because the process has been so hit and miss. They got a bunch of great draft picks. They also made a bunch of shit draft picks. They made some questionable trades. They gave away players that they never should have. Why wouldn't you do everything in your part to get Jimmy Butler to stay? You just went to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. You lost on literally the last shot of the match, and a fluky shot at that. You let Jimmy Butler go. You let Redick go. At various points, you let some other amazing squad players go. And you're forever changing. So then the excuses are always there. If somebody doesn't play well, it's his first season in this offense, in this system, this coach, blah, blah, blah. If the coach gets everything right, it's that. If the player gets something wrong, well, the coach didn't know how to maximize. There's always excuses when you're changing up the squad so much. And that's where I really like Daryl Morey, because he's not averse to doing risky stuff like the process, but he's going to do it with some sort of method to madness. And now that he's sitting over Elton Brand, I like how this looks. Daryl Morey himself is unproven. It's not like he's delivered a chip-winning squad. But you're putting him in a position where you can do that around a new set of superstars, not Harden, who really, it's tough to build a championship team around a player like Harden. So I like how it's going now. But I will say this, their squad players were never the problem. Their biggest problem was having the two superstars fit in the first place, and fit for long enough that the coach has time to figure out what their rotation should be, what their offense should look like, and how they play off of each other. That's been their biggest problem. I really think that can work, but their biggest problem is they never quite got enough of a sustained run to really look at how these two together can be a tour de force.
Absolutely, and we think, I mean, when we look at Ben Simmons, we look at his 3-point shooting, and we make fun of it. But I think he's created more 3 points than any other player in the
Yeah.
league, like Russell Westbrook, right? And with the addition of Seth Curry, who I said like is a 44% shooter from three, Danny Green, who's been there, done that. So I think it's a really interesting unit that they built up. I think it will work out for them, and which is why I had them number two actually, and looking forward to how this goes for the 76ers.
Yeah, they have shooters. They have some good shooters, and that's exactly what I mean. Ben Simmons is an elite playmaker. If you're not putting the ball in his hands, you're wasting his talent. You should trade him. But if you are going to put the ball in his hands, then absolutely play him at the four. Now that there's no Al Horford, they do have a vacancy at the number four. Instead of force fitting a big, not even a stretch big, to play the four, might as well play Ben Simmons and make him run the point. So it's a bit of a stretch big in the sense that he's going to run the show from the perimeter often, but he's not going to shoot from it. So an unconventional stretch big, if you will, in Ben Simmons. And if Simmons can stay fit, if Embiid can stay fit, they have the coach, they have the squad, this team can go places. And we'll know for sure. We'll know for sure if it's really the players or just their fitness, or what is it that causes them to be a meme in the playoffs so many times. But for that to happen, these two need to be fit. If they still flame out, well, there you have it.
All right, then. Talking about going to places, let's move to the West. And like the Philly, who finished sixth, and we moved them up in our power rankings. Let's talk about the Mavs, who actually finished seventh in the West. I don't think they're going to be finishing seventh anymore because Luka Doncic, I think he's really elevated himself from what we've seen in the bubble and the postseason. He really torched the Clippers, didn't he? Now, how does that team look? Because they've added Josh Richardson, who I don't know if I can call him an upgrade over Seth Curry, but I think they've gotten the right piece because you didn't really need Seth Curry in that team with Luka Doncic handling the ball most of the time. Now you got in Josh Richardson, who's an upgrade, especially in defense. So and the rest of the team remains as it is. So I think they're a really good unit. How do you think they are doing?
Well, first of all, I have Luka winning MVP. He's my favorite for MVP.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's because he has matured. It's because right place, right time. It's because he's going to get a lot of games without Porzingis. One injury or the other, or recuperation time, blah, blah, blah. So that's why he's my MVP pick. They have a really solid squad around them. The only real major difference has been Seth Curry, who moved out, right? And Josh Richardson is a fine player to add. Although I disagree, though. I think Seth Curry's shooting will be missed. Somebody who's that accurate with around a playmaker like Luka, around Luka and a stretch big like Porzingis, who cause all kinds of spacing problems, and you get open and you can shoot like Seth Curry, that's priceless. So however good Josh Richardson is from the three, it is a bit of a step down from Seth Curry, who outside of Steph Curry, like if you need an impact three shooter, there's none better than Seth Curry. So that's a loss for them. Now, do I see them finishing seventh? No. Do I see them going as high as third? No either, because there's going to be games. There's going to be a lot of games where they miss Porzingis. There's going to be times when they'll have to depend on their secondary and all of these support cast and crew to get things going. I don't think they have enough firepower. If Luka's off the court, this team looks shaky. If Porzingis and Luka are off the court, it's over. So I don't see them as a top three team. But just like Miami, regardless of where they finish in the league table, this is a team that's built to torture opponents in the playoffs. So that's really when their season begins. And next season, I'd fully expect them to go for the chip. So I'm looking at a good deep playoff run this season, and then they know exactly what they need to win next season.
I'm looking at the rest of the team, right? Apart from Luka and KP, they have Josh Richardson, like we mentioned, but they also managed to keep Tim Hardaway Jr. And Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber, and they've re-signed Trey Burke. They have Boban, as always, if needed, if they need the size. They have Barea, who they re-signed. They have Dwight Powell. That's a very deep team, and like we mentioned yesterday, with the outbreak of COVID, and you don't know how many players are going to miss out. This is a nice insurance to have, isn't it?
No doubt. And but I'm looking at the contracts, right? Tim Hardaway gets paid nearly $19 million, and James Johnson that they added, and he gets paid 16. That's a big money contract for a player who's largely coming in just to be Luka's enforcer. And that was the joke going around the league that Luka got a bodyguard finally. And he is that. He's exactly that. He's an enforcer. He's going to rough you up, kind of like a Ron Artest, a young Ron Artest, minus that level of game. It can't be a coincidence that they have both of these contracts lying around while they've shipped out Seth Curry in exchange for Josh Richardson. They're obviously clearing house to get set up for free agency. But then if they need to make a trade, these two contracts total up nicely to a max contract, and maybe they can add in a couple of picks and get something going. So I think both of these are going to be important trade pieces, Tim Hardaway Jr. and James Johnson. But for the season, it doesn't hurt that they provide a nice little bit of depth to the squad.
Totally. And looking at Tim Hardaway Jr., he actually did a really good job against the Clippers. He was one of the pieces that really pushed the Clippers. He ended the season with a 39% shooting from outside the arc. So, really good piece to have, adds the experience as well. And same with Dorian Finney-Smith, right? He's a real absolute beast of a defender, which players, I mean, he's one of those Marcus Smart kind of guys. He's always there in your face, not letting you get a space, not letting you get any space or a shot out. So I think really a rugged squad, and that's what they need around Luka.
Yeah, except Luka, everyone defends really well. They put their heart and soul into defense, and Porzingis, of course, is a monster. So it's a nice squad. They've got real depth. They're built to be really strong. But I just don't think this squad, as it's shaped right now, is going to make waves in the regular season. Maybe top 4, maybe top 5. But in the playoffs, they're going to be a handful. That's when they're really going to shine. When you play the same team repeatedly again and again and again, and it's a question of whether the one offense can figure out the other's defense or vice versa. Somebody like Luka, if there's a Porzingis fit next to him with this depth, that's an unstoppable force in the playoffs.
Totally. You mentioned about how Mavs were clearing up their salary space, right? And you talked about Giannis. But what about Luka? He's up for a contract next season, and he could probably be up for an extension. He could be up for a supermax if he wins the MVP as well.
Yeah.
Interesting times for him. And is this something that you think he's here to last, right? You compared him to, say, Magic Johnson or a Larry Bird.
Right.
And he's that kind of a player. He can pass the ball. He can create plays. He can shoot the threes. He can shoot. He can get his own shot. He can dribble. He can do everything and get his own shot off. And he almost averaged 10 rebounds as well. So how much better can you get?
Yeah, I think he's more Larry Bird than he is Magic. But from whatever videos I've seen of Larry Bird and documentaries and all of that, he was a pretty incredible defender too. So that's something Luka might have to work on and improve. I don't think you're ever going to see Luka be an elite defender in the league like a Ben Simmons or someone of that level. But I think he should be able to get his defense up to a level where it's acceptable, and he doesn't kind of stand out and stick out like a sore thumb and be a liability the way James Harden often is. Though I feel like he gets a lot more stick than he deserves for defense. So Luka, there's room to improve, but everything on offense, he's so much like Larry Bird and probably a better playmaker than Larry Bird. Though Larry Bird was a way better shooter. So there's upside, there's similarities, but there's also tremendous upside and areas where he can improve. And that's the frightening part because he's so young. He's what, 21 now? He's got years of improvement. He's 4 years younger than Giannis, and Giannis is a young superstar in the league. So it's insane how much time and freedom he has really to explore his playing style and see where he needs to double down. He can absolutely be up for a supermax if he wins the MVP. There's a bunch of other criteria, but I think the MVP is something that is credibly within his reach and something that I think he's the favorite for this season. So there's that to look forward to because right now he gets paid less than a third of what Porzingis gets paid. I don't think that makes too much sense to him, but it's a rookie contract. That's how it works. So big year for Luka. Jason Tatum had a breakout year last year, and damn, he got paid. You would expect Luka to want the same or better.
I'm also looking at Porzingis. Is he the guy who actually Mavs want to depend on long term? Because given his history with injuries, he's kind of been when he plays, he's absolutely great. No denying that. But he's been kind of inconsistent in the number of games he's played, right? He's missed large portions of the season, and he missed the bubble. He missed the postseason against the Clippers as well, a few games there. So is he the kind of guy that Mavs actually want to keep because of his salary, the salary that he draws as well? So what do you think about the Porzingis situation?
Yeah, Personally, my controversial take would be they should trade him at some point, and maybe they're looking to trade him at some point because
Mhm.
I love Porzingis, and it's great when him and Luka play together. And Porzingis is 25, so you're looking at these guys, you're thinking dynasty. 21-year-old superstar, 25 amazing players, chip sometime in the next 2-3 years, and this is a dynasty in the making. Except Porzingis is 7'3", already proven to be injury prone. 7'3" is not a height that lasts very long in the NBA.
Mhm.
You get to 30, 31, and then it starts peeling off rapidly. And the decline it's incredible. You take the best of the best. Yao Ming, boom, gone. Shaq, horrible decline. Some of these you can blame on attitude and just not being motivated enough in the later parts of their career. But most players see major injuries and surgeries and all of that, and you're never the same anymore. And Porzingis is a stretch big. So he's out there being your best defender at one end. Then he's out shooting threes, driving to the lane, bumping bodies. It's a lot. For a player who's already injury prone, to be 7'3", doing all of that, it doesn't add up. Like they call him the unicorn. It'll really have to be a unicorn achievement for him to stay fit in the long term. So when you say dynasty and when you say he's only 25, you've got to take into account he's 25 but 7'3" and injury prone. It doesn't mean the same thing as it does for a guard. Like Luka's 25, I'd expect him to play till 35, barring any major injuries, right? I can't expect the same of Porzingis. So then if he's going to, I think this season's like a litmus test. How far can they go in the playoffs? And how fit can Porzingis be? How much can he deliver? Because otherwise, that's a great trade piece.
All right, then. So that was our analysis of Philly and Mavs. I had them both second in both the East and the West. Nishant had them second. Philly had second in the East as well.
I have
not in the
Mavs
top four for Mavs.
and yeah, making the playoffs, but top four is going to be tough.
But eventually, I think these are two teams that all teams want to avoid once the postseason begins, and that's where they would be in our analysis as well. So, all right then. Nice doing this with you. Nice analyzing these teams, and we'll keep doing this as we begin the start of the season. Looking forward to the camps in the preseason.
Yeah, I hope AD signs. That's the only thing I'm.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't
Giannis
want
will
to
come.
make an
Screw that.
absolute
Just
fool putting him as the MVP and without a team.
yeah. But he might get a big contract at Charlotte if he moves.
All right then. Talk to you soon.
All right, just.